In affectionate remembrance of English cricket, which died at the Oval on the 29th of August 1882, deeply lamented by a large circle of sorrowing friends and acquaintances. R.I.P. N.B. The body will be cremated and the ashes taken to Australia. So that is the famous obituary that was published in the Sporting Times on the 2nd of September 1882, following a crushing, astonishing result for England at the Oval 4 days earlier when they had lost a one-off test match to Australia by 7 runs. It had all been over in 2 days. It had massively upset the odds. And Jon Surtees with me, Tom Holland here. Incredible. The Oval is there at the beginning
Incredible.
of the Ashes.
It's incredible. The Ashes were not considered before this game. It was a standard victory. It was expected to be a standard victory for England over Australia, and yeah, there was the national outbreak of outrage and hand wringing seen after that defeat is something that has, even by the standards of the British press, rarely been matched ever since, I think.
Yeah, and so Ivo Bly, who then captains the touring team that will go to Australia to play the next series of Test matches, he goes and he says, "I'm going to recover those Ashes," and as a result of that, the idea of the Ashes becomes something that Australians talk about, although actually to begin with, not in England, and then. In due course, a couple of decades later, it catches on in England, and this idea of the Ashes as probably the most historic, celebrated, enduring international rivalry, not just in cricket, but perhaps in all of sport. It
Yeah,
has its beginnings in the Oval, and so we're going to be looking at that today. But we're also going to be looking at the way in which the Oval, much more than any other cricket ground in England, has in fact always been the historic focus for Anglo-Australian rivalry in cricket, because
yeah.
long before that Ashes match, that first Ashes match is played at the Oval, another Australian team, the very first Australian touring team, had come to England and they played the first match at the Oval. And this team is, it's not white cricketers, but a team of Indigenous players, an Aboriginal cricket team from Victoria, and they come to
Wow.
England, massive press interest, as you can imagine, a certain degree of sniffiness from certain elements of the British press. So the Times, for instance, describes them as the conquered natives of a convict colony. But actually, over the course
Oh
of the
my word.
summer,
Ouch.
the Aboriginal cricketers, they're a tremendous success. They play very well. They become very, very popular, and the whole tour is deemed a great success. So they play 47 matches in all, and they win as many as they lose. And they two players in particular become very, very popular. So there's a guy who's known as Johnny Muller, whose native name is Unarimin. I hope I've pronounced that right. Who's a brilliant all rounder. And there's a guy called Dicker Dick, again, whose uh, real name is Jungin Jin An Uki. And again, apologies if I've mispronounced that. And his shtick is to he'll hold up a kind of a shield, a traditional shield, and he'll get spectators to gather around and hurl cricket balls at him, and he'll fend them off with his shield. And this is a subject of great delight and excitement. So great success, and the Oval gets in there first. And I think that this is one of the things about the ground. It is
Of
always ready
course.
to have a punt. You know, it loves
Yeah.
novelty. So the thing about the Oval, it's a historic ground, but it's always willing to experiment. And the reason it's historic is because it's always there, right at the beginning. So it has the longest track record of any ground. Um,
It's
and in
always
due
there.
course, when an England team goes to tour Australia in what retrospectively will come to be seen as the first Test tour of Australia, so that's 1876 to 7. And it includes, of course, the first ever Test match, as it comes to be described, which is played at the MCG in Melbourne in March 1877. And Surrey players are represented in that match and in that tour. So they contribute 2 players. Sussex contributes 2. Nottinghamshire contributes 2. I'm afraid to say that Yorkshire contributes 5. So
Oh,
that's a great shame,
no.
isn't it? Because Yorkshire is really the great rival of Surrey, the kind of the north-south
Well,
rivalry. Yeah.
we did lose
Um,
the first test.
well, exactly. So that's a very poor reflection on Yorkshire. And
Yep,
proud to say
yeah,
that
I'm pinning that on them.
the 2 Surrey players who are taking part, they do very well. So one of them's a
Of
batsman,
course they did.
Harry Jupp, who's a bricklayer. So you can imagine massive forearms. He also runs a pub. So he's a pub landlord like Al Murray.
Oh,
And he's an opening
yes.
batsman, very powerfully built, very short. And he's nicknamed the Young Stonewall. So
That's
no
wonderful. That's wonderful.
no T20 pinch hitting nonsense. He just goes out there and
The
blocks.
young Stonewall.
Although, I mean, he's called the Young
That's
Stonewall,
wonderful.
but actually, when he plays in that first Test match at the MCG, he's actually 35, and so he's not so young.
There's
And he scores
there's
England's
hope for us
first
all.
ever 50. So, hooray for Surrey! Basically,
Yes.
it's
Harry Jupp.
Harry
What a
Jupp.
hero. Harry Jupp.
Yeah, a name
Yeah,
to to decorate the ages. Now, the other person is a bowler,
absolutely.
and this is a guy called James Southerton, who is, by common acceptance, the best slow bowler in England. So he's the first bowler of any kind to take 200 wickets in a first class season. I mean, that's a lot. And he
200
also,
wickets in a season.
like Harry Jupp, is a pub landlord. So this kind of link between
Wow.
early first class cricket and pubs is it's a very kind of inspiring story. And he is landlord
Yeah.
at the Cricketers in Mitcham, and he's known as the Mitcham Figaro. And have you ever played at that ground? It's a very, very historic ground. So there's
I'd
the
love to. I've
pub
not. I've
is on
not.
the side of is separated from the ground by a road, and it still stands there, and it provides the pavilion. Um, so
Mm.
you change, and then you have to cross the road to go and when you go out to bat. And it was a very traumatic match. I captained there, and we were absolutely murdering the opposition. And so I thought I'd better make a game of it. And so I gave our best batsman out for I think 60 LBW, and we then inevitably collapsed, and they coasted to victory.
Oh,
So
oh,
so
Tom. Oh no.
yeah, I
Oh
mean
no.
I mean I don't think the young
How did
Stonewall would
that
have
go?
approved of that kind of behavior at all. So
How did that
yeah,
go down afterwards?
reflects very badly on me. But I don't think James Southerton would have liked it either, because he by this point is even older than Jupp. So he's actually 49. So I reckon that is a
49.
record that will never be broken. He's the oldest cricketer
Well,
to have made his debut. And the other thing for which he's
well,
famous,
no wonder
it would
Jupp was the young Stonewall at
yeah, quite.
35.
But also, there's another record that he holds that will never be beaten, because he dies shortly after returning from the tour of Australia in 1880 of
Oh,
pleurisy. So he is the first Test
oh,
cricketer to die. And just one other thing to mention about him: he
wow.
has massive sideburns.
Cool.
So one thing we haven't
It's
really
really
mentioned by this point is that the early years of Surrey County cricket, there are waves of massive blokes with huge sideburns, moustaches, beards,
yeah.
the works. It's a very, very hairy club.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
now probably people would say it isn't.
Yeah.
It's quite a clean shaven club, isn't it?
I think it's pretty clean shaven compared to,
I mean,
yeah,
you've got Rory Burns'
previous
astonishing
eras. I'm trying to
mullet,
think of
but otherwise,
Rory Burns and his former hair glories. Yeah, Liam
yeah.
Plunkett had a pretty beautiful beard, but yeah, beyond that, Jordan Clark. There's been some facial hair there over the last few years.
I'd like to see the
He's worn a bit
sideburns
there,
come
but
back. I think that
I
would
think
be the
so. Yeah, I think
kind of
so.
showing
Well, for
respect for James Southerton. He deserves it.
absolutely. Well, for
Anyway,
those that want to have a look at this, do walk the pavilion in the Oval. Do walk up and down the stairs there, and on the stairs in the pavilion, on one side you have Cat players, on the other side you have Surrey old Surrey teams from history, and there are a few, Jupp and Sullerton, and there are that you can get your own, view these sideburns and moustaches and beards and Victorian haircuts for yourself. They're right there to be seen on the stairs.
Fantastic. Yet another reason to visit the Oval Pavilion. But John, so there are two
Yes.
playing in this first Test match, but there should have been a third. So
No.
still wouldn't have beaten Yorkshire's number, but would have beaten Sussex and Nottinghamshire. And this is the best wicketkeeper in England. Is a guy called Edward Pooley, who
We had the best
he
wicketkeeper in England,
breaks
of course.
over the course of his career. He breaks every single finger and both thumbs. And there's a story told of him that
Oh,
he is keeping wicket
wow.
at Lords, and he, the ball kind of rears up and knocks three of his teeth out, and he spits them out and carries on. And then he goes out for lunch, and in the pavilion is a famous
For
prize
soup,
fighter,
presumably.
of course, with a straw. Famous prize fighter called Jem
Yeah.
Mace. And Jem Mace says to Pooley, I would rather stand up against any man in England for an hour than take your place behind the stumps for 5 minutes. So that's a tremendous tribute to him.
Wow.
But the problem is he's also he's
Wow.
notorious for his gamesmanship. And I'm afraid what Bailey's magazine, which is one of the leading sports magazines of the time, termed his absurd tricks. And these absurd tricks
Wow.
catch up with him.
A
So
wicket-keeper.
before the England team go to Australia, they've been to New Zealand. And in Christchurch, Pooley gets into a fight with a guy who thinks that he's been ripped off in a bet. And Pooley actually
Oh,
gets
no.
arrested and charged with assault. And although he gets acquitted and released, and he comes back and joins the England team, and he's a great hero, he misses his chance to play Test cricket. So that's very sad for him and very
Oh,
sad for
Ted.
Surrey.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing we learnt from the previous anecdote of what happened at Lords was that he was more likely to have been arrested and charged with assault and malicious damage than lose the fight.
Yes, absolutely. Um, he
So
is
I
he
think
well.
one anecdote backs up the other.
So that's his absurd tricks. Yeah, coming through. So
Yes, it's
so
absurd. Yeah, his absurd tricks have just been very hard.
so I think already Surrey, the Oval, it's part of the fabric of Anglo-Australian rivalry. But there's actually
Mm.
one man whose base is the Oval, a kind of committed Surrey man, who probably has more than any other man, any other figure, um, plays the key role in its evolution towards becoming what it is today. And this guy isn't even a player in Surrey. He is a sports administrator. And he is a guy called
My
Charles
hero.
William Alcock. So tell us about him. He's your hero, John. Tell us about him.
He he's my absolute hero. So Charles Alcock, the first ever employee of Surrey County Cricket Club. A couple of pictures of him up in the pavilion as well. He is credited as one of the founding fathers of the FA. He's credited as one of the founding fathers of the modern oval. He's credited as the founding father of the FA Cup. He's credited as the founding father of international football.
Well,
He's
he is, isn't
credited as the
he? I
founding
mean,
father of international cricket.
because
It's extraordinary. It's
he's
absolutely extraordinary what he's achieved.
he's one of those kind of Victorians that makes you feel exhausted just reading about the stuff that he's doing. Because actually,
Yeah,
football is
yeah,
his great love. Cricket is kind of second to football.
yeah.
So, as you said, I mean, he's the secretary of the FA from 1870. He's the founder of the FA Cup. He captains the team that wins the first FA Cup in 1872. So he
Yes,
and
yes, Charles.
that's a team called the Wanderers FC, which is basically the kind of the footballing equivalent of the MCC. They're all very posh. They're
Yeah,
all from Harrow, like Alcock himself. Um, and he also captains England against Scotland in the first ever football international that is played in 1870. And this isn't actually recognised officially by FIFA, is it? Because Scotland actually only consists of Scotsmen who lived in London. But it's definitely
it's
an
correct.
international
Yes.
team. And one of those players is the son of Gladstone, the Prime Minister, who is himself a Liberal MP. So
Well,
again, this is a story
here he
full
is
of Prime
again.
Ministers and Liberal MPs. And both of those
Yeah.
matches, the first FA Cup and the first football international, are played at the Oval. And the reason they're played at the Oval
Absolutely extraordinary.
is because Alcock also has incredibly close links to Surrey. So he hadn't played for Surrey. So as a cricketer, he played for Middlesex and Essex and the MCC. But in 1872, he becomes the secretary of Surrey. So this is at the same time as he's secretary for the FA. So, I mean,
Yep.
unbelievable that he's
Yep.
got both the jobs. And he's brought in because the county is in quite a bad way financially. So all those roller skating rinks and things, they're not paying off. And Alcock
Mm.
is brilliant at looking around for ways to bring in money. So he is the guy behind the roller skating rink, but he's also bringing in rugby, tennis, lacrosse. I mean, basically anything that will make money. And this is why in 1878, when an Australian team comes to England and tours and they play Surrey at the Oval, he is really, really fascinated to see how much public enthusiasm there is for this. And you know, the queues kind of stretch all the way down Brixton Road. They pile in, and he watches as Surrey officials are basically kind of trying to stop people from pressing in on the ground. But there's so much enthusiasm that there's nothing they can do. And all the Surrey officials are very upset about
Yeah.
this, very offended. But Alcock says, no, this is brilliant, and he logs it in his memory banks. And 2 years later, when the Australians come back for a tour of England, Alcock is primed and ready, and he's determined that the Oval is going to have a bit of the action. Now, those of you who are watching this on video, uh, you may be aware that there's been a sudden change in the light. And John, the idea that this might be because I had to leave abruptly when we were recording the first half and go off and give a talk. I mean, the very idea that didn't happen, did it? We've just done it for the fun of it. So
No.
that's basically
No.
what's happened.
Absolutely not.
So apologies for that, but
I hope you had a lovely evening in Clerkenwell.
we're now going to return to the narrative. Um, so John, 2 years later, in 1880, the Australians are back. So they've come back on tour to
Yeah.
England, and this tour it's a bit of a, I mean, it's kind of underpowered, isn't it? And there's a number of reasons for that, and partly because it's been arranged late, and they're not being given a fulsome welcome, basically because Lord Harris. There are a lot of lords, a lot of kind of very craggy cricketing lords at this period
Oh, very-
of English cricket, and he had led MCC to Australia, 1878 to 1879, and at Sydney there'd been a massive crowd
yeah.
disturbance, and because he's a lord, he'd been very disdainful of this. He didn't approve of Australians rioting at all,
Yeah.
and so he thought they should be
It's not quite sort of Kennington Common standards, is it?
no,
There's no. I
no.
don't think we're aware of that. But yeah, it's still not good.
And so when he came back, there was actually talk that the Australian tour should be cancelled to show the colonials what was what, but it went ahead
Yeah.
because it was late. It was difficult with the fixture, so there's no match at Lords. Lots of the other counties can't accommodate them. And Alcock sees in this a massive
My
opportunity
man.
because your great
Of course
hero,
he does.
because where other counties are saying, "Oh, we're not going to play them," he has got this memory of how popular the Australian team was, and he senses a massive financial opportunity and also a way of kind of putting, burnishing the Oval's reputation as the sports ground in England. So he says, let's host the Australians at the Oval, and let's get an England team to play them. And to do that, he needs to get actually kind of Lord
Yeah.
Harris on board, and he persuades Lord Harris, yeah, let's go for this. He also needs to get WG. WG is really, really keen on it. He then needs to find a suitable
Yeah.
date, and this is the problem because it's a very congested calendar and it's already quite late in the year. So Sussex are due to play Australia on the 6th to the 8th of September. So Alcock goes to Sussex
Yeah.
and he says, "Guys, come on. You're down on the south coast. Who cares about that? We've got the Oval. Let
Yeah.
us
I
have the
think. I
match."
think he. I think he physically goes to see them in Sussex, which in 1880, I think he physically gets himself from London to Brighton in 1880, which is, not the easiest thing in the world to do. I
Well,
think,
he's got that
his
splendid.
commitment to this effort, I think.
Yeah, so he go in Victoria, he go over that beautiful viaduct that leads down to Brighton. So he's going all in. He's completely
Yeah,
committed. And so the
yeah,
first Test match goes ahead
yeah,
in this slot that Sussex were meant to be playing, and England are captained by Lord Hawke again, who's out for revenge, and Australia are
yeah.
captained by Billy Murdoch, who is by some
Great Billy
leagues their
Murdoch.
best batsman, isn't he? Um, kind of very,
Yeah,
very, very great
absolutely.
batsman.
Great man.
WG Grace, who of course is England's by miles England's most iconic player, he's not just playing, but is one of the kind of the moving figures behind the match, and also playing his two
Yeah,
brothers, GF Grace and EM Grace. Now, the key person who is not playing in this game is Australia's most iconic player, Fred Spofforth, who has probably the best name, the
the
nickname,
demon.
the Demon. So he's injured his hand. And this is great news for England because,
Yeah,
I mean,
it
Spofforth
is.
is lightning quick. So he takes the first hat trick
Yeah,
in Test history, doesn't he, at the MCG?
yeah, that's right. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think we'll be returning to Spofforth later.
We will. Because Spofforth is, I think, also he's the first bowler to kind of eyeball batsmen when they play and miss, or if he
Yeah,
feels they need putting in their place. So, in a way, um,
yeah.
he's the archetype of the fast bowler, and so that's why we talk about demon fast bowlers,
Like
demon
an
bowlers.
archetype. We've talked in the past about the level of upper lip hair that's
Oh yeah,
prevalent in
he's got a
Victorian cricketers,
magnificent
and again, the
moustache,
demon,
hasn't
the
he?
demon Spofforth,
Yeah, he's got
absolutely magnificent. The idea of him eyeballing Grace with Grace's huge beard
I
and
know,
Spofforth's magnificent moustache is
I
just
know.
it's a wonderful thing to imagine beneath the gas holders,
It's an
no
absolute
less.
facial hair off. But it's not happening now, so that's
It
sad.
really
But
is.
but that's what the fans really want to see is the top beards, the top moustaches, the two great iconic players on either side meeting up. It's not going to happen now, and this is probably all to the good for England. So what happens in this match, 1880?
Yeah,
Lord Harris wins the toss. He bats. WG goes in and he smacks 152. So this is excellent.
of course,
England make
of course.
420.
Pete Grace.
Australia go in and they are bowled out for 149, and they follow on. Second
Yep,
innings, Billy Murdoch hits, I think, 153, not out, 100, yeah, 153.
153. I think. Yeah, comes to the party. Comes to the
Um,
party, Billy.
I'm so glad we've got our first comes to the party of this series. It wouldn't be a podcast about cricket without saying that. I mean, it's not
Couldn't be.
exactly a
Absolutely couldn't be.
party, really, because they make 327, and that means that England only need 57 to win. Um, Now there is almost a party, having said that, because at one point England are
However,
36 for 5, and poor old FR Grace bags a pair, but WG is in and he sees them home, so England win. So hurrah! And it's actually poor FR Grace, Fred Grace.
yeah,
It's a terrible few weeks for him because after this match in which he's got a pair, he he goes and plays cricket. There's an absolute deluge. He gets absolutely soaked. He then spends the night on a damp mattress
in s-
in
yeah,
Stroud.
soaked in Stroud.
He gets a chill and he dies. So I mean, that's a terrible, terrible way to end your season, isn't it?
It's
You get a pair and then you
it's
die.
about as bad as it can get, I think.
Yes. However, he does have the consolation that he takes an amazing
We
catch
shouldn't.
in that match in front of the gas holders. So it's not all
Yeah,
bad.
absolutely.
But I
It's the
mean,
way
generally, it's
it's the way that he'll be remembered.
it's the way you'd want to be remembered. Um,
I was just going to say on Fred Grace, standing in the footsteps of Ben Stokes, launching the 2019
yeah,
Cricket World Cup, taking an incredible catch in front of the gas holder. It's lovely to think sometimes, sad as it was that was one of Fred Grace's final acts on a cricket field. It's wonderful to think of, as things change, as things stay the same, people taking wonderful flying catches in front of the gas holder.
yeah, and a relief that Ben Stokes didn't get soaked in Stroud. So yeah, com-
Yes,
yeah.
that would have.
These
Yes.
these are the
When do you think
reflections
Ben
that
Stokes last slept on a soggy mattress?
not for a long while, but these are the reflections that playing at a historic ground like the Oval kind of serve to generate. But and talking of historic grounds,
Mm,
John, I mean, the key thing is it's not really that England win, but that your man, Alcock, I mean, he's played a blinder because it's a massive, massive success. So over 20,000 people
yeah,
flocked to the ground um, on both the first and second days, and that's capacity. And other people are kind of climbing up the gas holders and doing all that kind of thing. So it's a great, great success, and it
trees.
shows that Test cricket, can be successful in England. And it's the Oval that proves that. So hooray for the Oval. And just to reiterate, the Australians are
Hooray
not
for the
playing at
Oval.
Lords, are they? They're not playing at Lords. So how shameful is
No,
it
they're not.
that the centenary test in
Yeah,
1980 was played at Lords? And it's not surprising the gods were
I
so
know.
angry that they just made it piss down throughout the whole match, and it was completely ruined. So obviously it's a great success, and so therefore Alcock is keen to do it again. And the Australians are due to return in 1882. And so Alcock says, "Well, let's have another Test match at the Oval." And again, it's the only Test match on this particular tour. And it's fair to say, I think, that
Yep.
England are massive, massive favourites. So, as a man who has written about,
Yeah.
edited a book on Wisden at the Oval, you'll remember the commentary that is provided on this match in Wisden, in which they compare the players in the two teams, and they basically say, Australia shouldn't have a hope in this match. England is outgunning them on every front: the batting, the bowling, the keeping. Um, the only thing
Yeah.
that is in Australia's favour is that this time round the demon can play. So Spofforth, with
The
his
demon can
eyeballing,
play.
his moustache, his terrifying pace, and as it turns out, he's the guy who makes the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, Tom, I think it's worth quoting exactly what Wisden thought about this. So, if you to look at this, is Wisden says a perusal of these statistics must create a feeling of surprise that when the two 11s met, there was the slightest possibility of the English being defeated. Wisden were pretty solid in their undertaking as to who they thought was going to win this game.
Yeah, yeah. And so, if we have any Australians listening to this, they'll be delighted at what now now unfurls. So,
I think everyone should be delighted ultimately because although even if you're English, you'd be disappointed and potentially saddened by the outcome of the game. If it hadn't happened in that way, we wouldn't have the Ashes.
right,
So I think ultimately it's a win for cricket that this happened.
but also regretfully for Australia, although we've now got rid of all the tension. Australia are captained by Billy Murdoch again. But England are no longer captained by Lord Hawke. They are their captain now is A.N. Hornby, who actually appears on Cricinfo, John, when I looked this up, as Monkey, because he was apparently very short and I guess looked a bit like a monkey. And he's an amazing sportsman because he captained England at rugby as well. I think he's the only sportsman to have captained England at both cricket and rugby, and he played for Blackburn Rovers. And what makes it all the more impressive is that, I mean, he's got a hint of a double chin. I mean, he's he he doesn't look the most athletic of men, but he can play football, cricket, and rugby. So kudos to him. Anyway, so he is captaining
Oh,
England.
incredible.
Um, so he goes out into the middle to toss with Murdoch. Murdoch wins and decides that they will bat, and it goes disastrously. Australia are bowled out for 63. So England think, brilliant, here we go. Let's fill our boots. Um, they are then bowled out for 101 at 5 minutes before the close of play on the first day. And the star of the show is Spofforth, who takes 7 wickets, including WG Grace, who's opened the batting and is bowled for 4. So in the great facial hair off, Spofforth definitely comes out top. But England have this lead, so it's looking
Yeah.
promising. So second day, the Australians go out to bat, and Wisden phrases this. they go they go out to start their second innings. The colonists being 38 to the bad, which I think is a tremendous way of phrasing it. And they do well. I mean, by the standards of what's gone
Yeah.
before, they're bowled out for 122. But it's that innings is notable for a kind of Johnny Bairstow-esque kind of run out stroke stumping, isn't it?
Well, as we said, what happens now, you can guarantee it's happened at some point in the past, and here we go with another cracker.
Yes. So what happens is Australia have lost 6 wickets. They're just over 100 by this point. And uh, Murdoch is playing with lower order batsman called Sammy Jones. He hits the ball. They run one. Jones then thinks it's a dead ball, and he kind of wanders out from his crease. WG runs him out, and there's a lot
Bang, bang.
bang, and there's a lot of kerfuffle about this. And WG Grace is kind of saying, "Go on, my boy, off you go," 'cause he talks like that, and he feels that he's kind of he's given the Australians a lesson in the laws of cricket, and the Australians feel that this is an absolute blot on traditions of sportsmanship, and that it's not cricket, and it is pure Bairstow, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's absolutely pure Bairstow. You talk about Fred Grace and his catch and the Stokes catch, and you talk about this, and it's pure Bairstow, but the other way around. And yeah, it's a great thing. I love your impression of Grace is wonderful.
Thank you.
Because yeah, he is this huge, was this huge hulk of a
Yeah,
man with this giant sort of Viking beard, but yeah, the notoriously sort of softly spoken Gloucestershire
kind of high
accent in a
voice,
sort of vaguely high pitched voice. It's
a bit like
yeah,
Pam
it's just
Ayres.
wonderful to imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the body of a berserker and the voice of Pam Ayres. Anyway, so this just as Stokes and Broad were infuriated by uh, Bairstow's dismissal, so now the Demon is infuriated by this, and he really ramps it up.
also, again, not the first time this has happened. Let's take us back to the 1994 test and Farney de Villiers' unwise decision
Yeah,
to bounce Devon Malcolm, and Devon Malcolm's reaction to that, and what then happened in 1994. You guys are history.
yeah,
Just yeah, again, just incredible parallels all over the place here. Spofford, yeah, absolutely infuriated out of his mind.
right. So the state of play is in the final innings of the match, England need 85 to win, and you would think, that they're odds-on favourite to do that.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm.
it's the afternoon. They're kind of it's mid-afternoon on the second day, so this match is going at a tremendous lick. Um, they go out to bat. They lose 2 quick wickets, but WG is still there, and obviously, just as Spofford has been riled by the event, WG also is absolutely determined. He's not going to take anything from colonists, as Wisdom might call them.
Ticking,
So England reach
ticking.
with WG at the crease, reach 51 for 2, then it's 51 for 3, and then WG is run out. So he doesn't go to Spofford this time,
Yeah,
but he's run out. So this is treacherous for England, and so the two batsmen play very, very solidly, very safely, not taking any risks. Maiden follows maiden, and in the end, they have 12 consecutive maidens, but obviously excruciating tension. This partnership gets England to within 19 runs of victory, and they've got 5 wickets in hand. And then the Demon fires, they get blasted out, the tail is blown away, and Australia beat England by 7 runs. And there's all kinds of stories about people having heart attacks, isn't there? And chewing through their umbrellas and
yeah.
all this kind of excruciating tension. And John, this is the defeat that gives rise to the fake obituary.
That's absolutely right. As we started the episode with, the Sporting Times, 4 days later, comes out with a front page obituary for English cricket. For those of you that are interested in seeing it, it's very easily to find on the internet. You can also see it muralled onto the wall of the Kia Oval, just near the new hotel that's open there on the wall. A copy of the Victorian obituary there, and yeah, as some other people say, the rest is history.
Well, that's a very nice way to end this episode. And I think again, it just serves as a reminder of what this podcast series is all about: the incredible history that you feel when you go to the Oval, and that when you know about it, there's kind of evidence for it everywhere. And John, as you were saying, the way that key events in the early history kind of reverberate through subsequent decades, right the way up to the present. So we hope you have enjoyed this. Um, Next, in our next episode, we are going to be nominating our choice for the greatest of all Surrey's players, looking at his career, making the case for why he deserves the ranking that we're giving him. I don't think we're giving anything away when we say that he is the dominant Surrey player in the early decades of the 20th century. A great cricketer for England
Yeah.
as well. And we will be back with him in our next episode. So thank you very much for listening to this. Bye bye.